Hey guys, and welcome to episode 5.5. This is going to require some explaining. Basically, I said it in the description of the last video as well as in the comment section there, but I made a mistake again, which I also made after episode 3. That is, I actually overwrote this park file with another park. I opened an empty sandbox just to try some building ideas, and I saved it under the name Grizzly Valley, and by the time I had noticed it, the autosaves also saved over the Grizzly Valley save. And this basically meant that I lost Grizzly Valley. I still have a backup, but that backup was from before I started building this Mainstreet. So basically this entire Mainstreet is lost, and that is why I also wanted to call this episode 5.5. In the end, I sort of feel like this isn't really leading up to anything, though I still wanted to make this episode out of this to at least do something with the footage and be able to show off what the Mainstreet looked like in the end. But it's also a bit of a short episode since it was cut short before I could actually finish it, so that's why I decided to call this 5.5. And now something which I should say though is that it's not too bad, and I definitely won't end this series at all. The main idea of this series was in the end to try and experiment with new things and see whatever you can really build in the game, and for that purpose I think it's actually been a lot of fun and also really good practice to build this Mainstreet. And I'm just really glad that I still have the footage as well. So I will still continue the park, and there isn't too much to worry about that. I won't rebuild the Mainstreet in this way, since I just figure, purely because I want to try this, since the game is still an alpha, just to experiment with things, I would like to build a new sort of park entrance area at some point in the future. But before that, I also want to finish the rest of the park, so I'll just see whatever I do from this point onward. I just really wanted to show this video still, because it would sort of be a shame not to use it at all. And definitely since this is the last memory of this Mainstreet, which I have no other thing of than just the videos and photos that I have of the Mainstreet right now. So yeah, about a couple of the buildings that I was building here. I wanted to make some buildings which are very similar to what I already had, but still with all the buildings try out some new things. So over here I wanted to quickly see how well it would actually work to have a dormer without any inclined roof on top of it, since there aren't one-tile roofs that actually go down on both sides, which is something which I would have really liked to use there, but the very fact that they're not in the game sort of makes it hard to make dormers in exactly the way you would want to see them sometimes, and that's why I just wanted to quickly try out what a flat dormer would actually look like. And some other smaller details like this over here as well, where I wanted to try these chimneys over these pillars and see how they would actually work, which I have to say chimneys are probably among the most versatile pieces in this game, and you can use them practically for anything. And also very important, of course, is that I wanted to add many different flags. Not quite as many as the Mainstreet USA, but still really wanted to have some flags, which in general, you really find that if you have a building and you just kind of, yeah, could be better about it, you just sort of hang lots of flags on it, and then it's bound to look a little bit better at some point in time. At least it helps, definitely. And then over here in this corner, I wanted to have another building which is quite similar to the building which I have in the same place on the other side of the Mainstreet, just with a slightly different style, of course, and again try some different combinations of details and see what you can really do in the game. I think I actually ended up trying another type of dormer for this building and also have a round roof, but what was actually the most fun thing to try with this building is to use these little, not entirely sure, they're kind of like cornice pieces, but I'm not exactly sure what they're actually called. I use them all the time though, but I never really pay attention to the names. But basically this piece, if you sink it into the wall, I figured, and layer them like that, you could create the look of a sort of beige-ish planks, which you very often see on Mainstreets, or at least these planks would be colored on Mainstreets with all types of different colors depending on what building it is, but I really figured it would be nice to try, and definitely a good way to get some different textures onto different buildings in the Mainstreet. Yeah, so I did want to have that sort of round-ish mansard building. I don't actually, it's French, so it's probably like mansard or something like that, but I'm terrible at French, so I'm sorry about that. And really the rest of the building is quite simple as well. What in the end turned out to be my favorite part of this Mainstreet, and also actually of this video as well, is a building which is going to be next to this but which I will only get to in a second, which is going to take the remaining 5 minutes of the time lapse, which would be an hour in game. This is something which I haven't addressed yet in this very series, so I still get some questions from people asking how long this really takes, but I usually almost always speed up my videos 12 times, so that means that 5 minutes in game is approximately 1 hour, or in a time lapse, that makes no sense. 1 hour in the game is approximately 5 minutes of time lapse, so this particular episode took a little over 2 hours, and most episodes take somewhere from 3 to 5 hours really. Also sort of depends on how many off-ride shots and how much real-time parts I wanted to add in there. So this is where I think really one of my favorite buildings in the Mainstreet is going to be, and it's quite similar to the buildings which I already have. I just wanted to mess a little bit more with the entire Victorian facade idea and make this one of the more fancy buildings, sort of just go nuts basically with all of the details that I wanted to try and get on there. The only sort of tough part of it was the roof spire on top of it, where I was really hoping, or at least really thinking what would be perfect for it, is one of those very typical Mainstreet spires, which are square-shaped spires which slightly point toward the top but still have a little fence railing on top of them, and a flag of course, but those are not in the game, so really figured this was the next best thing really. But apart from that, I'm actually really happy with how this building turned out, especially when it comes to all the little details. Like, again, wanted to use these chimneys just to have some details on the pillars, and these cornerstones are absolutely amazing and I'm completely addicted to them, so couldn't stop using those either. And then it was actually quite interesting to see how well the balcony actually works as a corners piece as well, which I was really happy with in the end. I'm not really sure what type of building it would really be in an actual theme park though. I sort of just wanted to give myself a wild card to, well, go wild with the details, I suppose. And that's really why I wanted to try this in the end. It also takes quite a lot of all the other buildings. In a way, it's also sort of the accumulation of the entire Mainstreet into one building and sort of just putting everything that I learned and all of the little tricks and things that I found along the way into one building and see how that would all turn out. So in that sort of respect, I really figured it would be a nice conclusion to the Mainstreet, but in a way it also turned out to be a bit of a farewell of the Mainstreet. But yeah, aside from that, I also wanted to work a little bit more with some more contrasting colors on this building. I didn't have many blue buildings, specifically for the reason because right now nearly everything in the game is blue, and I wanted to avoid having too much blue. But I really figured in this case it would be quite nice to have it just to make it look a little bit more royal, and even have those little purple highlights, which I really wasn't sure about. That's actually a sign behind there to form the purple highlights on the top of the walls. But I'm actually quite happy with how that one worked out as well, so I may want to combine those two pieces a little bit more in the future. Like at the moment, there are barely any options to actually make colorful buildings, but I definitely think that the best way to do so at some point in time is definitely by using these signs to get some different colors into your buildings. And over here as well, very similar to the buildings which I have on the corners of the plaza with the fountain in the middle of it, I wanted to sink these arches a little bit into the wall, but not entirely, so they still stick out a little bit, but they don't seem like separate walls either. And the same sort of goes for the pillars. They are all just placed inside of the balcony there and not actually on the very corner of the grid. So this is one of those buildings which really has different grids for the different pieces, which I think, and this is also something which I've discussed in forums and in many chats as well, but I don't think I've really said it in a video too explicitly. I really think the best potential and by far the most flexible part of this building system is the very fact that you can have different grids for different parts of buildings, but also different elements within one building. So say put all of the pillars on one grid and all of the walls on another grid, because it's this very system which may actually seem very limiting if you just start the game. I actually find that many people try to get used to building things with just one grid per building, but I actually think the most flexible and really the most freeform part of the entire building system is how you can use different grids for different parts, just because you can put everything into directions and ways that is so completely free, but you still have some control over it, because you can still keep different parts that you want in different grids, or even move those different parts all at once, that it's so useful and it's so flexible at the same time, which is really something where I think this game is really amazing. I think one of the most important parts, probably as a game in this genre, to actually be able to cross is to be able to attract both the players who are quite casual and just want to build some simple stuff and have fun in the game, much like just playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. But on the other hand, you also want to try to convince players like me, who are complete nerds and shut themselves up in their room, to try to make realistic theme parks in games, to actually buy your game as well. And that's sort of like the two markets which you somehow have to both capitalize on, which I think a feature like this building system is actually really good for. It can be really simple and easy to use if you want it to be, but it can also be so incredibly flexible. And I just wanted to quickly, by the way, have some backstage areas over here as well, just to make it seem a little bit more like a real-life theme park, and also to see if you can actually build the backstage areas. And I do have to say, I was actually really surprised that Frontier added those little air conditioners, things like that. You're able to actually make the backstage areas, which is something which is actually really cool to see. Because obviously theme parks are completely fake, but you don't want your guests to see that. You sort of just put up the facades, literally and figuratively, to try to convince them that they're in this sort of fantasy world of the theme park. But behind all that, you still have the machinery, and it's really cool to see that Frontier actually added that as well. Anyway, I still have 2 pictures, which are the only pictures that I still have of the finished Mainstreet, as a sort of goodbye. This is one picture of the little city hall building. I'm not sure if I actually want to call it a city hall or a courthouse, but either one of those things, it's basically something like that. And then there's also this picture of the other corner. I didn't save any pictures of anything else yet. I was really figuring I would do that later on, but alas, I lost the Mainstreet. But that said, I will still continue to keep building on this park, and we'll definitely want to explore some different themes and different styles in the future videos. And definitely won't end this series here. And if I ever get back to the entrance of the park, I won't rebuild the Mainstreet in the shape that it was, simply because I think it's a bit of a waste of time, really. And those are like 13 hours I would much rather put into trying to see what else is possible in the game. And I have no idea yet what I'm going to do with it, but something else. That's basically what I want to say, I guess. Anyway, thanks for watching this sort of one-off video, and next time I'll try to come back to your regularly scheduled, not deleted park files. So thanks for watching, and see you later.